Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and officially get started here this afternoon. As they say, there's no such thing as a free lunch, so now I'm going to put you at work, and we're going to have hopefully a terrific conversation here in Sheboygan about the power of older voters. I do want to start with a couple of announcements at first. I'd like to recognize we have a couple of AARP volunteers who are in the room with us today. So if you could please stand. We have Francis, Eric, Charlene, and Judy. They are all from this area and close by. They are volunteer advocates. They advocate on your behalf in both Washington, D.C. and at the state capitol in Madison. So we thank them, and we're always looking for folks to join our volunteer corps, so hopefully you'll like what you hear today. I'd also like to recognize staff. Of course, over here is clearly our communications guy as he is taking pictures of us. This is Jim Flaherty. And then I'd like to recognize our state director who's going to make a couple, has an announcement. Sam Wilson is the state director of AARP in Wisconsin. He heads our office. We have 8 full-time staff members. We're located in Madison, and we work on your behalf and on behalf of the 852,000 AARP members just in the state of Wisconsin. Just in Wisconsin. In fact, in Sheboygan County, there are 15,087 AARP members. So you're in good company. So I'd like to turn it over to Sam for a minute, who has a quick announcement about something else that we're working on.
Thanks, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you so much for giving of your time today to come join us for this community conversation. I know Lisa is going to lead you through a great presentation and conversation about AARP's voter education activities this year. The one thing I would like to highlight is something that's very special about the Sheboygan community. I say one thing because you all know how many things there are special about Sheboygan, but Sheboygan is unique company, particularly in Wisconsin and around the country. Sheboygan is one of 3 communities in Wisconsin that is a designated age-friendly community, a title that is not easily earned. And it requires a lot of effort on the part of city leaders, community members, and community advocates to come together to make sure you're really looking towards the future of what the face of Sheboygan will be, and to make it a community that is accessible for all ages. One of the things I want to highlight as part of that, in addition to commending the community for achieving age-friendly designation, is when you registered, you should have received this card, and we're told about a Sheboygan for All survey. I know this is one of those things that can easily get lost in a folder or in a wallet or a purse, but I really encourage you to go online and take this survey. It is a concerted effort by city leaders in Sheboygan to get feedback from the residents of the community on the future direction of planning, development in the city of Sheboygan. It takes a few minutes of your time, but will have a lasting impact on everything that's going to be happening in Sheboygan in decades to come. So we're really pleased to partner with the city to do this survey, to help promote the survey, and we know that the city leaders are anxiously awaiting your impact. So please take a few minutes, fill out the survey. It will do a lot of good for a lot of people. So thank you, and with that, Lisa, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Sam. So one other quick announcement, folks may have noticed that there is a camera in the back of the room. Our particular community conversation today is being taped to air on WisconsinEye. And if you're not familiar with WisconsinEye, it's a public affairs channel. It's like C-SPAN. And the camera is kind of aimed on me. So you don't have to worry. There's not going to be any close-ups of you all on TV. However, it also sort of means I'm somewhat more tied to this podium than I would prefer to be. Usually I'm out wandering around. We will take questions and we'll hopefully hear from folks. Jim and Sam have microphones and they'll come around and they'll hang on to the microphones. They're tied into the taping system. So just wanted folks to be aware of that. And then today, as Sam sort of alluded to, I'm going to talk a little bit about AARP's voter education campaign, what we've been doing, frankly, over the past several months, what we'll continue to do for the next, what are we at, maybe 3 weeks now, 2 weeks. I want to talk about the issues that are important to older voters in Wisconsin, and mostly hear what you think about those issues and about what other issues might be important to you. And then we'll talk about how you can continue to be an informed and engaged voter, because clearly all of you care about voting. You're willing to give up part of your day, and especially a beautiful sunny fall day, to come and chat with us, and we really appreciate that. So I want to just also kind of maybe set the record straight and just make sure people are really clear on AARP's nonpartisanship. When we talk about elections, you know, people start to talk about parties and candidates and all that good stuff. Just so you are aware, AARP does not endorse elected officials. We do not have a political action committee. We don't give money to political parties. We don't give money to campaigns. We don't support or endorse candidates. We don't let our names be used in political advertising. We do, of course, take positions on issues. We, fight for things that we believe are good for older people and their families. But we do it based on whether we think it's good for older people and their families, not based on party. So I just kind of wanted to kind of get that out there and make sure people were aware of that. Now, we like to have things interactive. And we used to have this really cool sort of electronic computer polling system. But we got some new computers and it doesn't work on our computers anymore. So we are going totally old school. Now, in the middle of your tables, if you have not yet found these, you have the thumbs up, thumbs down paddle. They look like this. They're very clever, right? So here's how I'm going to gauge quick, just sort of take a temperature of the audience. I will ask questions, and when I'm asking a question, the question will appear up on the slide like that with these very cute little thumbs up and thumbs down. And we'll do a test question so we can make sure everybody knows how to work your paddle. And then I will sort of glance at the audience and quickly compute, oh, 2/3 of you think this. My math is terrible, so you're certainly welcome to challenge me on it. What I'm hoping is that will then lead us into a chance to have a conversation about whatever we're talking about. But this is sort of a good visual to just, kind of let me know where people are feeling. So embrace your paddle, pick up your paddle, know where it is, and let's do a practice question. I have already started planning for Thanksgiving, so I have been thinking pie, even though there was delicious tiramisu for dessert today. So my test question to you is your favorite pie pumpkin? If the answer is yes, show me your green thumb. If your answer is no, show me your red thumb. I'm going to say the no's have it. People do not like pumpkin pie in Sheboygan. Okay. It's not your favorite. It's not your favorite. Okay. So then I'll ask Sam and Jim, I will ask, what are a couple favorites? What's your favorite then? Just blueberry, apple, rhubarb, cherry, a little bit of everything. Okay, that's basically how our conversations are going to work. Now, generally, I may not have people shout things out because, you might have more to say about Social Security than you do about pie. So then we'll have Sam and Jim sort of come around and get the microphone so everyone can hear you. So, okay, thank you for being good sports about our totally old school paddles. I do appreciate that. So I want to give a little background now, kind of about older voters and about AARP's effort for this midterm election. You guys probably know older voters are reliable, right? They really have the power to decide elections. Older voters tend to get out more, they tend to vote more often, and they tend to get out at every different election. In the 2016 presidential election, more than 90% of registered older voters voted. So think about that, more than 90%. That is a huge amount. And older voters truly were an impacting factor in that election. So we kind of, at AARP, we think, okay, well, what can we do? How do we continue to get the word out? And how do we continue to talk to campaigns about the power of older voters? And that's really gonna be what we wanna talk to you guys a little bit about today. But it's time for your paddles again, oh yes. So if 90% of older voters voted in the 2016 presidential election, I wanna know, did you vote in the 2016 presidential election? Green, I'm gonna say you're even more than 90%. I'm seeing 100%. Sheboygan, you rock. You guys are amazing. Way to go. Now this will be interesting because I think for the taping, since the TV is basically getting the back of your paddles, so things might look a little opposite for the taping, but that's okay. I'll summarize it for the viewing audience. So my next question is, if we're gonna talk about the power of older voters, clearly you guys are interested in elections. We have an election coming up, and I'd like to know, are you planning to vote in the November 6th, the upcoming election? You already did. See, you guys rock. You're ahead of the game. No, the early voting has started, yeah, in a lot of places. Terrific. I'm seeing 100% again. Is there anyone who's not sure? Maybe you don't know if you're going to vote? No, you all are going to vote. Terrific. And at AARP, just so folks know, of course, we don't care who you vote for. We just want to make sure that people get out and vote, that you're voting for people who reflect your values, your opinions, and are talking about the issues that you care about. Well, here I'm going to be preaching to the choir since all of you are planning to vote, and hopefully we can just talk a little bit about some of the issues. But just so you know, even though you guys are all planning to get out and vote, we're worried in Wisconsin that there still will be voter drop-off. We know that there were 25% fewer voters in 2014 than there were in 2016. In Wisconsin alone, there were, 283,000 less older voters between 2014 and 2016. So even in the midterms, a lot of people, they just don't get out and vote. So I'm really glad to see that you guys are already planning that. So one woman said that perhaps older voters don't have any way to get to the polls, and that is certainly a challenge, I know. And that some nursing homes may not do a very good job of making sure that people vote. Now I think, Sam, there's someone, if you want to add in a comment.
I worked in long-term care for 30 years. Excuse me, I get upset about this. The social workers gave every person in that facility the right to vote. They explained the ballot to them, and they assisted those who needed to assist. So elderly in nursing home are allowed to vote, and they're encouraged to vote.
I know there are often special deputies that go into nursing homes and make sure that those folks get the chance. Sometimes our concern is the people who aren't in a nursing home, but who are maybe much more isolated, living at home, don't have any way to get to the polls. And we're gonna talk a little bit about one of the efforts we have to sort of boost some of that turnout. And just so folks know, AARP has been doing voter education for a long time. We've been doing voter engagement and education for about 32 years. It's certainly changed over the time that we have been working. We always focus on making sure the public knows about the issues that are important to older voters. And obviously we focus on making sure the candidates know what issues are important to older voters. If you've ever talked to campaign staff or often the staff of elected officials, you may find that they are often quite young. Folks in their 20s many times, and they're not familiar with things like Social Security and Medicare. So we do a lot of outreach in trying to make sure that the campaigns and the candidates know about that. So we're continuing to do that. In this election, however, instead of focusing as much on that effort, we're really focusing on older voters and on boosting voter turnout. One of the things we're doing, and I kind of want to mention this now, I'll go into your packets here. One of the pieces that we're working on, in addition to making sure campaigns and candidates and the public know about issues, we are having people sign a pledge to vote. Now, we have been around the state all through the spring and the summer and this early fall, going to tons of different events. We've been at fairs and exhibits. We've had postcard parties. We've done all sorts of public events to kind of bring attention to voters. And perhaps you even maybe saw our voter van that was parked. It's out in the parking lot. It has the symbol on it. I don't know if I'm moving into a dead spot. I think I need to stay here, sorry. It's really hard for me. I also talk with my hands, so this is challenging. But if you saw our voter van, we have put 8,000 miles on the voter van over the course of the summer. So we have been everywhere. And one of the things we've done is ask people to sign a pledge to vote. Now, it's a symbolic pledge. It basically just says, hey, I plan to be the difference and vote. And that's our slogan for this campaign. It's be the difference, vote. We want to make sure that people know every vote matters. So we've asked people to sign this symbolic pledge at all of these places that we've gone to. And there is a copy of this pledge in your packet today. It's on the left-hand side. And I will talk about some of the other materials too as we go through the course of it. But at the end of our session today, I'd love to be able to collect some of these pledges from folks. And as a little added incentive, you may have seen, we have a table over here. I'm going to move out of the zone, I think, perhaps. We have a table with fancy voter t-shirts. So we'd love to give people who turn a pledge in, we would love to give folks a t-shirt. We do have a range of sizes from small to 3X. Some sizes we're pretty limited on, and this is basically what we've got. We don't have much left, but anybody who turns a pledge in can get a t-shirt. So I know you too want to be seen around town in this lovely voter engagement t-shirt. Or they're good for exercising or gardening or napping. So I'll figure out a way at the end of the day to have people come up, and I've got volunteers who are going to help hand out t-shirts. So I am curious, do you have a plan to vote in this upcoming election? Tell me green if you have a plan, red if you're just not sure, you haven't really thought about it yet. Oh. What do you mean by a plan? So do you know when you're going to vote? Are you going to vote on election day? Are you going to vote early? If you don't have a ride, if you don't have a car, do you know how you're going to get to the polls? Are you going to go with someone? Do you know where your polling place is? Have you confirmed that you're registered? And I know we have a question in the back, Sam. Sure, wait one sec for wait for the microphone to come. And mostly that's because they're picking up the questions on the taping.
The question I have is does AARP focus at all on when we're talking about voting for older voters, the absentee ballot type thing for people who are homebound who don't have rides, I mean, you can get it in mail. You can get a ballot in the mail and mail it in. Do they educate people about that?
We absolutely do educate people about the absentee ballot option, and particularly because you don't have to have a reason, right? You used to have a reason. You were going to be out of the country. You were going to be out of town. You don't need a reason anymore. So we have done a lot of things. If you're an AARP member, you get the AARP bulletin, and there have been a lot of articles in that. We do a lot of emails. We do phone calls. We have done some postcard parties in various parts of the state where our volunteers got together and hand wrote out postcards to people who have in the past been drop-off voters, reminding them to vote, giving them websites where they could get information. So we absolutely want to make sure that people know what their options are. So we do that. So now I didn't really. It looks like the majority of people kind of had a plan to vote and kind of knew what you were doing. I'm just sort of curious, and I don't think I have I don't have a slide for this yet, but because someone had already mentioned that you already voted, right? If you have either already voted or if you're planning to vote early, put up your green thumb. Okay, I'd say maybe a quarter of people. If you're planning to vote on election day, put up your green thumb. I would say definitely like 3/4 of you are planning to go on election day. Okay, cool, that's awesome. I do want to mention, I mentioned briefly that one of the things AARP has been doing to educate our members is we have a website that's specific to the election. And I know not everybody's online. I know not everybody does computers. But a lot of folks do go online to find this kind of information. And the really about this website is that it's kind of a one-stop shopping place. So it's aarp.org/vote. And you can get tons of different information. You put in your address and zip code, and it gives you information on where your polling place is. You can get information on voter registration. It will give you links to the candidates' web pages for various races in your area. It gives you information on where AARP stands on some of the issues, and we're going to talk about that today, but not everybody gets a chance to talk about that. And then finally, that pledge I mentioned, we have an online opportunity for people to sign a pledge to if they don't get to come to one of our conversations. So,
yes, I wanted to make a comment for anybody who lives in the city of Sheboygan. If you would like to early vote and avoid the lines on election day, go to the city clerk's office. But since the city hall is closed, the clerk's office is now in the old Social Security building across the street.
Wonderful, thank you. That is a terrific community service announcement. Oh, and we have another comment.
Till November 2nd.
To do the early voting. Okay, perfect, thank you. I want to talk a little bit now, kind of move into the heart of our discussion and talk about how these midterm elections are going to impact older voters. And I'm really heartened to see that so many of you are planning to vote. Because the elections actually impact policies that get made and laws that get made. But a lot of people, kind of think, oh, it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. I was chatting with some folks before we got started today, and this is a comment that we hear a lot. People are disgusted. They're disgusted with the political ads. They're disgusted with the candidates. They're tired of the, kind of nasty discourse that's going on, or they don't feel energized about any of the candidates. People feel like they might be picking between the lesser of two evils. And that is a reason that people often give for not going out to vote. But we're trying to remind people that who's in Congress, who you vote for now, will have an impact on the laws that get passed. I mean, this sounds so fundamental. You guys are like, well, duh, because you're already planning to vote. But people often don't think about that. And for the next Congress, there are a couple of really big issues that the Congress is going to be facing. For example, they're going to have to work on shoring up Social Security. They're going to have to focus on some Medicare funding. There'll be rising prescription drug prices that have been impacting a lot of folks. Looking at the Medicaid program, whether to sort of expand it or whether to sort of, slow the growth down. And also looking at support for family caregivers. And these are key issues that AARP has identified through our member surveys and through things that impact the 50-plus voter. So I kind of want to take a little bit of time now and sort of go through each one of these issues. And I'll share a little bit about what the next Congress could do, where AARP stands, and then most importantly, I kind of want to hear if these issues are important to you and why. You all have also probably noticed that I am nursing a cough and a cold, so I do apologize for my scratchy sound today. So let's talk Social Security, right? The next Congress is really going to have to deal with shoring up Social Security. In Wisconsin, you might be surprised to know that we have about 1 million beneficiaries just in the state of Wisconsin. And that brings in about $16 billion a year in Social Security benefits that come into the state. Now, people rely on Social Security, and they rely on it often for a really significant chunk of their income. But as you guys probably know, there are demographic challenges that the program has been facing, right? We have a lot of people retiring. We have fewer people who are working and who are paying into the system. Now, at AARP, our goals, of course, is to make sure that Social Security is strong for future generations. But with the challenges that the program is facing, we know it can pay full benefits for about the next 15 years, and then the trust fund will run out, and only the payroll taxes will be left to pay benefits. That should bring in anywhere you see between like 75 or 80% of benefits, which will cut to those people who will be getting benefits in about 2034. Now, as I always like to tell my volunteers, that's the year that I am set to retire. So I don't want 75 or 80% of benefits. I want 100% of benefits. I've been paying into that system since I was about 15 years old. As have, your kids, your grandkids, you, people pay into the Social Security system. So we know that this next Congress, though, is going to have to start to do something. 15 years down the road isn't very long. When they made changes to the Social Security system before, it was in anticipation of the baby boomers, right? Baby boomers were not a surprise. It wasn't all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, who are all these people that are turning 65? There was a plan. That's why the Social Security, the age of full retirement was raised very gradually over a very long time. It's those kind of tweaks that will need to happen to make the system solvent. Next Congress is going to face some tough decisions around what to do with Social Security. And you've maybe even heard comments in the news recently about, these raging entitlements or the deficits going out of control, and it's all because of these sort of entitlements that have gotten out of control. One thing I will say is at AARP, we don't like to call them entitlements because people have paid into the Social Security system and even the Medicare system. But the fact is, we need to sort of figure out, okay, what do we do with these programs? And whoever is elected now will have the chance to figure out some of that. And there are proposals, there have been things that have been proposed to reduce Social Security benefits, to change the way that the cost of living adjustments are calculated. Much of that will depend on who gets elected in November. We'll see then what do they come up with. So my question to you is, and then we're going to talk about Social Security. So now you'll have a chance to kind of talk about, to give us your opinions on Social Security as an issue. But my question to you is, does a candidate's position on Social Security make a difference in how you vote? if how they feel about Social Security, oh my gosh, okay, 100% of you say, yes, it does make a difference. So, Sam and Jim, get your microphones ready. I want to hear from you guys. So what is it about Social Security? What would make you vote positively? You know, what if a candidate says what, that they support what, then what is it that would make you support them?
I've got one right here.
Okay.
Well, excuse me, number one, I don't like any candidate that calls it entitlement. It drives me wild. Number two, I believe it needs repair, and I'm sorry that Congress kicked it down the road many, many times in the future years, because we wouldn't be having this discussion now if it hadn't. And number three, to be logical about it in terms of what needs to be done, not just say we're going to do a flat cut or this or that. Have some practical numbers behind the theory.
We should raise the cap on the earnings that are subject to Social Security. When I was working, I had to work all 365 days and pay into Social Security. The average CEO of a company works about a week.
That is by far the most popular option. When we talk about options in Social Security to kind of fix that shortfall, that is by far the most popular option among the public. Only 6% of people don't pay 100% of the earnings. 6% of people make over that cap. So, but you lose a lot of income that way.
I'd like to tag on to what she was saying there, is that there may be only 6%, but that adds a lot of money in the end state when you're paying 7% about that out of your paycheck of those 6%ers going in there. The other thing is, I went brain dead on that one. I'll think about it and come back with you later.
Perfect. Jim?
Okay, I looked up Social Security Trust Fund Wikipedia, and it said the government has borrowed nearly $2.8 trillion from the trust fund to use money for other purposes.
So let me talk about that a little bit, because we always hear about that. And I know it sort of sounds like, oh my gosh, if they had put all that money. So people know the trust fund, right, is the payroll taxes that have been collected that didn't get used to pay benefits. And that was created in order to help prepare for the baby boomers, right? So people always say, well, gosh, we wouldn't have a shortfall problem at all if they hadn't, used that money for other government funding purposes. But if you think about it, then they would have had to borrow money from somewhere else. They're using those to fund other government operations. That money would have had to come from somewhere else. And the way that it's been explained to us is, think about your bank. If you have $1,000 in a savings account in the bank, there's not a lockbox with your name on it with your $1,000 in that bank, right? You've put 1,000 in, you've put 1,000 in, you've put 1,000 in. There's not a separate box with all that money in. If you come in and you want $500, they're going to give you some of his 1,000. It operates just like a bank. So there's money that's in there, but keep in mind, the banks don't have the full, if every single solitary person came at once, right? They don't have enough money to pay all of that out at once. And Social Security really is the same way. So those trust funds all will not need to be redeemed at the same time. So that's just an explanation really of how it works more than anything.
What I was told was that when they drew up Social Security in the 30s, at the time everybody was very suspicious of the stock market. So by law, they have to invest in treasury bonds because the government, full of faith of the government, stood behind it. And that's essentially what that trust fund is. And when the government issues treasury bonds, that's borrowing from Social Security. So the politicians like to say that they're stealing the Social Security funds, but no, they're, like you said, all money goes into the bank into one pot, and the same thing happens here. But I don't think in around 2010 we wanted to have Social Security funds invested in the stock market.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I know, yeah, I was going to say, Jim, we've got another.
Yeah, I consider Social Security a good fund to have in case of a depression. So the old folks had at least some money to spend, and it's a leveling influence. And I ask a politician of any style, do you favor Social Security? And they say yes, absolutely. And there are only two ways to fix Social Security, either tax it or cut benefits. And they won't give you an answer to either one of those.
You know, I think one of the interesting things, then we'll come back to you, Jim, we'll come back to this guy in the red in just a second. One of the interesting things Francis kind of mentioned, you know, if you ask candidates, where do they stand on Social Security? Nobody ever says, you know what, I hate Social Security. It's the worst program that ever happened. We should completely get rid of it. People will always say, and candidates will always say, Social Security is a terrific program for those who really need it. We have to make sure it's there, but it's, you know, it's going bankrupt. It's not going to be there. We know young kids think it's not going to be there for them. But you also have to stop and think about, well, how do they, you know, what are they really saying behind that to make sure that it's there for people? Because there are a lot of people who are trying to sort of create this notion that Social Security is, you know, just pennies away from not being able to pay a single dime. That when the trust fund is gone, that's it. There won't be a single solitary Social Security check cut. But the fact of the matter is, right, the payroll taxes still continue to come in. So there's still a big chunk, about 3/4 of the benefits that can be paid. So it needs to be tweaked so we make sure people get the rest of those payments, but it doesn't need to be decimated in order to make up for that. So, yeah, sorry.
If we put all the politicians and senators and congressmen on the same program we're on, we're going to have the best Social Security and Medicare in the world.
I'm so glad somebody mentioned that, actually. Because, and this is a super common misconception. It used to be that members of Congress were not part of the Social Security system. But since 1984, all members of Congress are now part of Social Security. They still have a federal pension, as well as some of you might be getting Social Security and have a pension from the company or organization that you retired from. But members of Congress are in the Social Security system, and very few people know that. So they are. Sam?
Okay, I'm back again.
Wonderful.
First of all, the majority of Congress, most of those are all millionaires, and they're not counting on Social Security to survive, okay? What I was going to talk about before was the percentage of the payroll tax that we are paying as we work needs to probably go up a little higher than what it is now for those who are going to be retiring far out from where we're at. Because over our lifespan, that has gone up from when we first started working until now. So that's another thing that needs to be looked at, as well as raising the limit or absolutely doing away with the limit. I think that's probably the best thing to do. That's equitable to everybody. You know, it's kind of like the flat tax. You know, they say nobody wants to do a flat tax, but 10% is 10%. It doesn't matter what you're getting. So if you're going to take money out of your salaries, then everybody should pay until they're eligible to draw, and regardless of how much money you make. The third thing is the ones who are proposing, and it's gone by many different ways for the younger ones to go and invest their money into, be it 401ks or any of that, as a way of salvaging Social Security. That's relying now again on the stock market, and the only ones going to make money off of that are the investors. Okay, so that's the fallacy of that system. It's not the money you've paid into it, it's the money you're paying somebody else to manage your money. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation in that regard.
You know, I think you bring up a lot of really good points, and all of you who have had some really good things to say about Social Security, what it kind of reminds me of is if you're having a chance to talk to a candidate about Social Security or talk to their staff or, you know, or even just talk to elected officials once they're in office, our question to candidates from our end is usually pretty broad. You know, what are you going to do to make sure that Social Security is solvent for future generations? But it really also helps to ask some of the specifics about the things that you guys have brought up. You know, ask them, would you support, would you support either raising the full retirement age? Would you support either raising or eliminating the payroll tax cap? Okay, we'll try this one. So I'm just saying it's good to kind of ask those follow-up questions to people so you get a good chance of where they stand. We're gonna do two last comments on Social Security, Jim and then the gentleman in the black shirt, because you guys, it's like 12:30 almost, and we have 4 more issues.
Does AARP have a policy on voting on the weekend?
We do not have, I don't think we have a policy on voting on the weekend. Here's the thing, we want voting to be as easy as possible for everyone. I've never heard that I mean, I'm sure we would support that just because we want voting to be accessible, we want it to be easy, we want to make sure that everybody is able to get to the polls, that people aren't denied. We want people to exercise that right to vote. But I've never been asked that question, and I don't think we have a policy on that per se.
Would AARP endorse a policy of monetary for people to vote?
You mean kind of like paying everybody $5 if they come and vote? I don't know about that. I would have to look. I'd have to look at that. Yeah, I suspect.
He said he could get the young people to vote.
I think young people are energized and they're going to vote without that.
Just to touch on that, I think in New Zealand, if you don't vote, you get fined $25.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
But anyway, the comment about we don't know what the politicians really think about how to handle it, I think we do know. I think they told us in the past Congress they intend to lower taxes for the rich and themselves. And to this year, now they're talking about lowering benefits. So I think we have the answer from what Congress thinks about, Medicare, Medicaid.
Well, certainly in the news the past couple of days, we have heard from congressional leaders, with the deficit increasing so much. And frankly, the cause of the deficit increasing is due to the tax reform bill, and that was known when it was passed. And now they're saying, well, the only way to solve that is to cut entitlements. It's to cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And so you're absolutely right. Whoever gets elected is going to have the chance to make those decisions. So hopefully people understand that and are thinking about that when they go to the polls.
One more?
Okay, one more. He's our very, very last Social Security person.
Has AARP ever asked their members, taken the survey as to would they support raising the income level for Social Security? There are many members who are ages 55 and above, and that gap between 55 and 66 are still working in the workforce, and if they're willing to pay more or they're willing to increase it, maybe that was something you could take back when you do speak with your senators or congressmen and say, this is the percentage of our membership who supports raising the limit, and they're both working as well as retired.
You mean raising the payroll tax limit? Okay, yeah, the payroll tax cap. I will say, and I'm sure we have done member polls on that at some point, particularly during Social Security debates. AARP listens to our members a lot. We do those official polls. We also listen to things, if you guys call our office, if you send an email, we gather up all that information, and it all gets sort of fed up to the higher levels. I will also make a pitch. We also do totally old school ways too. I didn't really mention this, excuse me, before. At the back of the room, by those balloons, there is a white poster board. And that poster board, we've used it in some other events, that poster board says, tell us just one issue that you wish elected officials would work on. So we've asked people that at events, and people put comments up on Post-it notes. We actually have an intern who types up all those Post-it notes, and then we send it up the chain. So I encourage you, there are Post-it notes and Sharpie markers back there. You can put any kind of comment you want on there. It doesn't have to be, tell us just one issue you wish elected officials would work on. But you can tell us, we wish, AARP should be working more on eliminating the payroll tax cap. I do know it is by far the most popular option, because if you think about it, it actually affects the fewest people. Like I said, only 6% of people are above that payroll tax cap. So the rest of us, the vast majority of us, are working 365 days. Our entire salary, we pay that payroll tax on. And so most people are very supportive of that option. I want to go now, and I encourage you, please, to make some notes or make some comments about Social Security and stick them up on that Post-it board. But I do want to talk about a couple of our other topics as well, because I'm going to suspect that you guys have a lot of stuff to say about Medicare and healthcare too. So Medicare funding is going to be another big issue that's going to face this next Congress. And again, it goes to this whole, the deficits, getting crazy high, and they're saying we've got to cut entitlements to take care of that. And Medicare is a pretty good chunk of the federal budget. It's 15% of the federal budget. So anytime we look at federal finances, Medicare somehow always ends up to be sort of in the crosshairs. Now, I will say Medicare, if people here in the room are on Medicare, they sort of know and understand the value of the program. Again, Medicare pays the health care costs of about 1 million people just in Wisconsin, and it brings about $11 billion a year into the state that goes to businesses, that goes to small businesses sometimes. It goes to hospitals, but it goes to healthcare providers and transportation providers, and it goes to a whole host of large and small businesses that operate in the state. But Medicare doesn't get quite as much attention as Social Security, but as you may know, its finances are actually in worse shape than Social Security's. It's in about the next 8 years that the Medicare Trust Fund will not have enough money to pay for hospital bills. And there are several things that are kind of adding into that. We have rising healthcare costs that are rising much more quickly than inflation is. We have exploding drug prices, and that's kind of a separate issue that I want to talk about as well, but that feeds into the costs of Medicare too, right, when the drug prices are so high. There's a lot of inefficient and uncoordinated care that's happening within Medicare. And so kind of taking a look at those things and figuring out how to slow down the exploding rate of healthcare costs is something that's important. And it's something that Congress is going to have to deal with. Now, one of the challenges is when Congress takes a look at Medicare, they say, gosh, I'm so sorry. And they say that they're going to do something to, modernize the program or fix the program. You really have to think about how are they going to bring down those costs in Medicare? Because there are basically two ways they can do it. They can increase costs to consumers, right? They can say, okay, we're going to bring down the federal spending on Medicare because you're going to pay the difference. You're going to make up the difference. We're, consumers, those Medicare beneficiaries will pay more. Or they can say, we're going to try some new things to bring down healthcare costs. We're going to try some new models. We're going to try some payment reform. There's no magic bullet, and it's not an easy answer. But you have to sort of think about what are the different ways that Congress can actually act. And we do know that Congress there will be proposals around Medicare. There were proposals in June. People may have heard that there had been a proposal, and you've heard this before as well, I'm sure, to turn Medicare into a voucher program right? To give people to say, okay, we're going to give you X number of dollars. Now you go out and find a private health insurance plan. And you know, good luck with that, right? And there are also proposals where some people say, well, let's expand Medicare. Let's expand it to everyone. We know there'll be proposals to make some kinds of changes within Medicare. And again, it depends on who you elect in November. What will some of those proposals be? What will move forward? That will be one of the keys. Okay, you thought I forgot about your paddles, didn't you? No. Oh, no. No. You're not done with these yet. Okay, so I'm just curious. Is Medicare an important election issue for you? If it is, hold up. Okay. You guys are like awesome. Okay, so this is an important issue for you, all green paddles. Well, why? Why? Why is Medicare important for you? And does it matter in an election? What's important about Medicare? And what do you want your candidates to do about it?
I'm on dialysis, and that's why I'm on Medicare. But when you're on dialysis and Medicare, you cannot get any of these other funds, insurances, like AARP.
Right.
And dialysis for me costs anywhere from $17,000 to $19,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
$17,000 to $19,000 a month. I don't think very many of us could cover the cost of that. Okay, Sam, we'll go to you again, and then Jim.
I'm a retired nurse, and so I've worked in healthcare for 35 years. One of the things is there needs to be, or there should be, some kind of a cap on what people are able to charge. For example, I go to see a doctor, I'm in there for 15 minutes, they send me a bill for $235. There's no way on earth that 15 minutes of that doctor's time costs that, even factoring in overhead of utilities and employees. And then when you look at your insurance bill, the insurance contracts with them and takes off like $130. So that tells you that they're inflating charges from the beginning. There should be a cap on that, and that would help Medicare.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that might cost $230 on your insurance, but then on your insurance it's going to cost $100, and on your insurance it's going to cost $500. It's different depending on what different plans have negotiated, right? And if you don't have insurance, it costs you $1,500, right? Right. What else about Medicare? What's important about the issue to you, or what do you think is a good? What are some good solutions for Medicare, or why is it important to you?
Well, I think some of these, when they set up these programs, they should go talk to some of these European countries, because they're paying less than half of what we are for medical costs. And it's not only Medicare, it's all medical costs. Years ago, we used to have what was called a hospital rate setting commission, which they got rid of. So if they wanted to build a hospital, they had to get permission to do it. Well, that got taken off, and so now it seems to be competitive who's going to have the biggest and fanciest hospital, which of course we're going to pay for this. I mean, and the drug prices, that's the same thing. All the other countries pay a lot less. In fact, I have a friend whose husband is on insulin, and so she drives up to Canada. She goes up there twice a year. She pays for an overnight stay, trip back and forth, and she buys 6 months worth of his insulin, and it still costs her about half of what she would just pay for the insulin in this country. And none of these things are being addressed, and they should be. But they do it in Europe. Why can't we do it here?
One of the proposals we hear about Medicare to sort of address some of those costs, and I'm curious what you think. What do you think about Medicare vouchers? What do you think about, and do people understand what that is, right? Hopefully you maybe have read about. So this table over here is really well trained, and I like it. So let's have everybody do it. I just said, what do you think about Medicare vouchers? And they all went like this. I'm not telling you. What do you think? So you don't know what it is. So Medicare vouchers, there have been a proposal, and it's come up several times. Right now, you know, when the government pays a pretty big chunk of Medicare funding, you pay your premiums, but that's really only about 25% of the costs. So sometimes it's sort of hard to figure out what those Medicare expenses will be. So the proposal around Medicare vouchers is to give each person a set amount of money, and then you go out and find a private insurance company that is willing to cover you. And then you basically go shop in an open market and find a company. And there are people who say it gives you more control over, you know, you only can pay for the things that you want that way. Of course, it's sometimes hard to figure out if you're gonna, you know, have a heart attack, or if, you know, if you're gonna have a stroke, or if you're gonna get hit by a bus. But it's also a way to keep those Medicare costs in control. They'll be able to know, well, we're gonna spend, you know, $500, and I'm making this up, but we're going to spend $1,000 on each one of you. So that's an option. So I saw a lot of thumbs downs on the Medicare vouchers, but any thoughts on that?
But my question is yes, maybe it's going to control some things on the one hand, but if we don't have transparency in the billing side or the cost side of our healthcare system, it's not going to work. We need to know. You need to be able to compare, like for instance, MRI costs anywhere from $600 to $4,000. You need to know that stuff so you can make decisions about what you're going to pay.
Absolutely.
My concern about a voucher program is, I mean, I've been dealing with Medicare for a long time. I used to do it for my mother and my mother-in-law, and now I'm doing it for myself. And I know for a fact, and I hate to say this, but as you get older, it gets a lot harder to navigate some of the confusion of Medicare plans and Advantage plans. I mean, and it's the beauty of Medicare in a lot of ways is it's as complicated as it can be, it's still probably more simple. I mean, I did Obama healthcare, and I did the marketplace, and it was a nightmare. I mean, in comparison, Medicare is more understandable, and it's still difficult, but I can't imagine what it would be like if you go to a voucher for an 85-year-old person or an 80-year-old person. I don't know how they do it.
There is a real thing about the sort of, you know, too much comparison shopping leads to paralysis. I mean, there have been lots of studies that have been done around that. Sam will go there, and then Jim, you'll go there.
I just want to touch on what she said. Can you imagine, okay, my husband had Alzheimer's. He could not figure out how to sign his name. I have a 95-year-old mother. There's no way she could possibly shop for health insurance. She is confused the way it is. And, you know, and all the people, like they said, in the nursing home, okay, then you'd have to hire a navigator to help these people. That's going to increase the cost. There is just no way that would work.
Good thoughts? Yes, Jim?
Number one, I would suggest that we look into fraud very carefully. I don't know, every time I look in the paper, there's $1 million here, $1 million there for doctors or whomever doing fraud. Also for the voucher program, the problem is we're adding another layer of profits, and that's the insurance companies. They're going to want to make a profit. And so now if we say, okay, we're going to have, give everybody a chance to pick their insurance company, whatever insurance company is not going to want to make a profit, therefore they're going to add that cost on there as well. So I think those are the issue with it. You know, one of the ways you can reduce costs is get rid of fraud or somehow investigate that further.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good thoughts, good thoughts. Okay, Sam?
I'm concerned about the non-supervision in nursing homes primarily for people who, like my mom, were on Medicare and in a nursing home and did need medications, okay? One of the things that concerned me is that I used to pick up her medications from Glanders, okay? When I lived with her to take care of her. And when we went to the nursing home, I negotiated the ability to do that. But they would have preferred that I go through the nursing home prescription company, okay? And they had indicated to me that even if I go to Glanders and pick up her pills for $15 and bring them over there, they were okay with that. It wasn't a secret thing, but it was okay. But they still had to send in documentation to indicate that these were the prescriptions that she was taking. And they would get back from this approved prescription drug company the billing that would have occurred had she taken their company. The $15 prescription drug capsules would cost $90. And there is no oversight, as far as I can tell yet, about the monopoly that a prescription drug company can have over nursing homes in this city. Something's not right.
We're going to talk about prescription drugs in just a minute here. Yeah, because I think that's a huge issue. The whole issue of transparency, of price, skyrocketing out of control prices. So I want to come back to that. Okay, so Jim, you've got Francis and then one over here. And I see one more in the back, and then you're going to be our last Medicare, and then we'll move on.
There was a Harvard study before Obamacare that 45,000 people would die of the year over treatable cases due to lack of insurance. That's about the same number that we lost in Korea every year. And that's immoral for the richest country in the world not to provide for their citizens.
Agree.
The problem with the voucher system is you have to go out and shop private insurance. So that said, private insurance companies are not going to insure you if you're 70 plus years old, you have diabetes, you have heart disease, you have respiratory disease. They're not going to insure you. If they do, they're going to charge a premium that is outlandish. Then you get into coding. You have to submit a code. So every time you go to the doctor, he submits a code. Well, the insurance company may not like the code they submit, and then you get into a game of, well, you have to have your doctor recode it. Well, what code do I need? Well, the insurance company says, I'm not going to tell you. The voucher program will not work.
Okay, good thoughts. Our last Medicare comment, and then we'll go on to prescription drugs.
I just want to tell everybody they should go to their ADRC. They will help you immensely with finding insurance companies. I went a couple years ago because my prescription was just and I'm on my second year now with who they told me to go to, and my prices have been holding. They are the most valuable asset that this county has. And I suggest everybody give them a call and go for any kind of help.
Thank you. I'll even repeat that. It's the Aging and Disability Resource Center. People call it ADRC for short. Every county actually has someone called an elderly benefits specialist who will do just that. We call them red tape cutters. They will sit down with you. They'll help you kind of look through different Medigap policies. They'll help you look at Medicare Part D plans. If you get a bill you don't understand, they'll help you work through that. Thank you, because they are a terrific, terrific resource. And so the ADRCs are fantastic. I want to, we have about 10 minutes left, you guys, and I have 3 issues. We're clearly not going to get through all of them. But let's do prescription drugs, because I think that is kind of a burning issue. And I really want to go back to what this woman said earlier and about the whole topic of prescription drugs and the fact prescription drug prices are rising 10 times faster than the rate of inflation. They're skyrocketing. They're through the roof. And what reason is there for that? There's no reason for that other than the fact that nobody is putting a stop to pharmaceutical companies charging whatever it is they want when it comes to drug pricing. You will often hear drug manufacturers say, well, you know, the research and development, it takes a lot. We got to charge these high prices because research and development takes a whole lot. And certainly it takes some, but it doesn't take nearly as much as the advertising and the lobbying costs that the pharmaceutical industry does. Now, people rely on prescription drugs. We want to have them. We want to have advances. We also know that a lot of that research and development, you know, oftentimes is done in concert with big universities, right, who are already getting public funding. So the pharmaceutical companies don't necessarily need to recoup some of that funding through these exorbitant prices. And to hear things like, well, you know, this drug costs $15,000 a month, or there are drugs that will help you feel great. Oh, but they're $100,000 a year. Sorry, you can't have it, because who can afford that? No one. Transparency is a big issue. When you walk into a pharmacy, you really have no idea what you're going to get charged for a drug. If you go into a Walgreens on the east side of town and picked up a prescription, it could cost you $100. You could go to a Walgreens on the west side of town and get the same prescription, and it could cost you $110. There's no consistency when it comes to that. So we know that, like, I mean, a lot of states, you know, even Congress, people are trying to grapple with this high cost of prescription drugs because it's really hurting individuals, and it's hurting state and federal budgets as well. Now, one proposal that AARP supports is to allow Medicare the ability to negotiate for prescription drug prices. As you all probably are aware, now they can't do that, so it's really up to the Medicare Part D plans what they charge. So I want to do one last chance to use, well, maybe I might have one more chance, but one chance to use your little paddles. Is the high cost of prescription drugs an important election issue for you, or whatever? Yes, okay. So I think we had heard a little bit of discussion about that, but does anybody else want to add anything in around prescription drug pricing?
We are working to get the music turned off.
I know, that was kind of weird, but okay.
I recently received a new prescription from my dermatologist, so there's nothing earth-shattering. I paid $75 for a tube of cream, about the medium size of toothpaste. Had I submitted it to my insurance, it would have cost me $423.
Oh my gosh.
Outrageous.
That is crazy.
Hi. I'd like to know if we can get rid of that donut hole. My husband is on insulin also, and another diabetic drug, and both of them are very expensive. So after you're on a drug plan, you get 2 refills, and now you hit the donut hole. So the rest of the year, you're paying a big chunk of money out. It's ridiculous.
So, you know, believe it or not, the donut hole has actually been narrowing since the Affordable Care Act passed. The Affordable Care Act said, okay, over the next 10 years, by 2020, we're going to eliminate the donut hole. Now, I just want to say and kind of make clear, by eliminating the donut hole, that doesn't mean your drugs are free. It means that you would just continue to have the copayment, generally a 25% copayment. But Congress actually passed something, believe it or not, earlier this year to actually even eliminate the donut hole a year earlier, starting in 2019. And then pharma was like, no, we don't like that. We want to extend the donut hole again. But thanks to AARP members from around the country, AARP was actually able to stop pharma from extending that. So right now, as things stand, the donut hole will be eliminated starting in 2019. Again, that doesn't mean that your drugs are free during that portion, you still have your co-payments. But the donut hole has long been kind of an issue of contention. And it was the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that kind of said, yeah, the donut hole kind of stinks. Let's get rid of it gradually. Jim?
I think one alternative to that donut hole is if you're a veteran to go to the VA during that period of time.
Yeah, that's a great alternative. And I'll mention another alternative that we have in Wisconsin that other states don't have. It's a program, a Wisconsin state program called Senior Care. And Senior Care is a terrific program. Anybody can apply and use Senior Care. The cost of your drugs kind of depends on your income limits and the cost of your drugs, and there are some different levels. I know you can find information about Senior Care online, and again, that Aging and Disability Resource Center, those folks can help you apply. It's super easy. It's a single-page application. It's like double-sided. It's the easiest application form you'll ever see. So if you are struggling with the cost of your drugs and you're age 65 plus, please do check out Senior Care.
There's another thing you can do with Senior Care. When you turn 65, if you take Senior Care, it's considered a qualifying insurance. So later on, if you want to go on Part D, you don't have to pay the higher rate. But another thing that you should do is find a good pharmacist and establish a relationship with the pharmacist. I know I have used Voltaren for my knees. It's sort of a pain reliever, anti-inflammatory drug. My daughter had to pay $250 for a tube of it that she was prescribed. I get 5 tubes for $46 because my pharmacist told me that she could do this. If I have the prescription written for 5 tubes, she can fill that all at one time, and I only have 1 copay. And also, there's a lot of drugs that, regardless of the strength of the drug, the price is the same. So if you cut them in half, you only pay half as much. So it's good to have a good pharmacist.
Yeah, good tips.
Another tip is to contact the manufacturers of the drugs. I'm diabetic and on insulin, and right now I'm going with the companies, and they're going to be giving me free insulin.
Good.
It'll be mailed to my doctor, and then I would just have to go and pick it up.
Great. Yep. Very good tip. Sam, we'll do 1 or 2 more questions and comments. You guys this is so much fun, but I promise I won't keep you here all afternoon.
Okay. I've heard that a pharmacist is under contract and cannot publicly tell you that the drug would be less expensive in another means. But if you as a consumer ask if the cash price is cheaper than my insurance company, that relieves them of that contractual agreement, and they can say yes it is or no it's not.
Excellent tip. Excellent. Excellent. I know we'll go to the back and then.
I just want to make one comment. With all the stuff that's going on and how they're cheating us and living off of us, don't they realize in 8 years we're not going to be going to the hospital anymore, getting drugs, we'll all be dead. They won't have any money, but the funeral home will be booming.
Well, that's a happy thought.
I don't know what to do with that comment, so Lisa, back to you.
One way to reduce costs of prescriptions that I've found is when my doctor gives me a new script, I call the pharmacy and ask them how much it'll be. Then I go online and look, and I get coupons, and it cuts the cost by 50 to 75%.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion, coupons for coupon shopping. We'll let the woman in the colorful jacket have the last word on this.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what the last lady said, my doctor, my optometrist, has been very, very helpful in providing coupons, samples from the manufacturer, and getting me enrolled in a discount program directly through the manufacturer to bring my $500 eye drops down to $20.
Ouch! Wow, that's a good coupon. That is a good coupon. Well, you guys, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed this conversation around the issues. There are a lot of times when I prepare these presentations and I think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to fill the time. And we didn't even get to some of our topics. But I want to point out some of the things that you have in your packets, because it will sort of take the place of a couple of the issues that we didn't get to. Oops, there. So, in addition, of course, I'll make a pitch one more time for our pledge. Well, if we can get you to sign the pledge, and then we'll have folks hand out T-shirts for that. If you're a member of AARP, you get the AARP bulletin, and there have actually been a series of terrific election articles in the bulletin. And the one that's in the latest edition, in the October edition of the bulletin, is why vote this fall. And it kind of goes through some of the topics and issues that we were talking about today, and some of the key issues that we're working on. You also have in your packets, I put a copy of AARP's position papers. These are position papers on our federal advocacy issues, what we have been talking about today, the Social Security, Medicare, drug prices. We also want folks to know that we work at the state level as well. And we do election issues at the state level. And we've mailed copies of the position papers both to federal candidates and to state candidates. And some of the issues that we've been working on at the state level are up on our screen. We're working a lot in caregiving, which we didn't get a chance to talk about today. But at the state level, we're trying to pass something called the CARE Act and the Caregiver Tax Credit, which both support family caregivers. And then we're also working on broadband issues, primarily to make sure people have access to telehealth and communications. And then we're working on something called Work and Save, which is to help people save for retirement, even if their employer doesn't offer a way to save at work. So you have information on those state issues as well. And then back to our federal issues, one of the pieces in your packet is this little handout, which gives you questions that you can ask candidates. And so I encourage you to sort of use some of these. And I just want to say I encourage people to become informed voters. Check out the candidate web pages. Go to trusted sources. There are things like PolitiFact. You can go to some of those websites and find out where candidates stand. You can go to that aarp.org/vote website. Candidates want your vote. Make them work for it. Go down to the campaign office. Ask them, questions about issues that are important to you. And so, that'll just give you more information about the issues that you care about. I want to thank you guys so much. We've run over our time, so we'll wrap it up here. But if you have your pledge, we've got volunteers who are starting to deliver them, it looks like. But we'd love to get your pledge. We'd love to give you a T-shirt. And I just want to thank you, and thank you all for your good discussion, your good comments. I really appreciate it. And have a wonderful afternoon. So thank you.